See you on the other side, special Monday bonus edition. This is Mike coming at you, and today I am joined by a very special guest who's about to do an investigation going back up to Massachusetts to find the spirits of the Lizzie Borden house, and we are with paranormal investigator Susan Slaughter. Susan, how you doing on this fine Monday afternoon?
I'm doing lovely, and it's very hot in the high desert.
And so
Staying cool.
Okay, staying cool, and that's what's important. Cool. In the dark of the night, paranormal investigation. I'm interested in how you got involved in paranormal investigation in the first place. So just for people who might not be familiar with you, might not have seen your work, and we've talked to a variety of different investigators of all kinds, from mediums, that got, they had a sickness when they were teenagers and all of a sudden they could talk to the dead, to people who've just had little flashes, like seeing their grandmother in the back of the car tell them to stop, like right before they got hit by a train or something. What is your weird origin story? Like, this isn't just something like when you go into the paranormal, how did you come out of the paranormal closet? It's a big step. What was kind of your precipitating factor to join us here in the weird world?
Well, I came out of the closet pretty early. I think I was about 5 years old when I had my first paranormal experience. And I've just been living with paranormal encounters my whole life, and it just got to the point where I was trying to understand the things that I was seeing and experiencing. So I think, like most people that get into the paranormal, they get in because they've had a personal experience and they want to touch base on or scratch at the surface at what the deeper meaning of that is. Is there life after death? What's the purpose of this? I find that so just to go back to when I was 5, I was like seeing things.
Right.
Like
I want to see what happens when you're 5 years old. Like, I'm thinking when I'm 5, like I discovered Doctor Who and that changed my life. Like a paranormal experience would have blown me away.
Yeah. I mean, when you're experiencing things like that at such a young age, I think it's very important my mother did things correctly, I think, because when I would come to her and be like, hey, Mom, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, crawl in her bed, and be like, there's a fireball in my room, or I'm seeing balls of light, or, sometimes I would see like shadow people in my room. And I was, at first I was a little scared of things like the shadow people and the balls of light. But eventually she kind of turned it into a positive experience where she would say things like, when you're seeing these things, they're just your guardian angels. They're here to protect you. They're watching over you. And in a way, I've always had a form of insomnia because I'm always expecting to see things at night. And I carried this type of phenomena with me for a long time, well into my teens, my early 20s. And as I started aging and the more I started investigating, the types of activity that I was personally experiencing started to morph and change. But that might actually have something to do with the fact that I was more communicative. I was reaching out, asking questions, using tools. And so I was starting to develop a sense of like certain psychic senses and things like that. I think as an investigator, if you do it long enough and you're within the field long enough, you start to develop extrasensory perceptions, and turn a little psychic. I do believe you could teach yourself those things. So any which way, I started, as I got older, like kind of doing a lot of the urban exploring type things, going and trying to find, haunted locations. And I would watch series on the Sci-Fi Channel back in the day, the first incarnation of Ghost Hunters, so I became a fan of that. And I eventually joined a team in Miami, which is where I'm from, and I was with that team for about a year and a half, and when I saw that Ghost Hunters was doing, I guess they're looking for more investigators, and then that's how I got into paranormal investigating for television purposes. So I started with Ghost Hunters Academy, which was like a competition series. And then myself and Carl Pfeiffer both won, and we were able to choose like which Ghost Hunters series we wanted to be on. And I chose to go international. And then I
And
started working
Carl's
the
great. Carl's great. We met him for the first time at a convention last year. And have you had a chance to watch Hellyer yet? His series?
Yes,
Yeah.
I I absolutely love what they're doing. Carl is uh, I love Carl. Let me just talk about Carl really quick. He is one of the most level-headed dudes out there. He's an amazing writer. He came out like he's an accomplished writer. He's come out with books like this thick and like published them. And I forgot what was the name of the first book that he wrote. I read and I thought it was fantastic. It took me about like a month and a half to read it. It was very in depth and fantastical. But anyways, he's also part of the Dark Zone. He's part of the Dark Zone family. So he's responsible. Like the picture that you put up of me, that was shot by Carl. He is pretty much the aesthetic backbone to all of the Dark Zone.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and we have a series featuring him and Connor from the Stanley Hotel, where they do all the like Stanley investigations. Yeah, that guy's my brother. I love him. I stand behind his projects for sure.
That's all. Yeah, I just really enjoyed Hellyer.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of songs in Hellyer too. It was just a lot of fun after we met Carl, and I was aesthetically right. It's something it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
You know, I had him send me his lookup tables or whatever for video stuff because I'm like, what's this guy doing that makes everything look like a work of art? Brilliant. So awesome. So
yeah.
You're getting, so you start experiencing weird things as a kid. You start getting interested in paranormal investigation. You're already in a team in Miami when the casting call goes out. You're like, cool, Ghost Hunters Academy. You're going through it. You win the competition. So you're the winner of, obviously you don't get voted out by the tribe.
I have not. No.
You make it to the end. Right. And then you go on Ghost Hunters International. Dark Zone TV is a network dedicated to paranormal stuff. And we featured when they did the live investigation from the Conjuring House earlier this year. We talked to Corey for a long time about that. And now you're coming on to do an investigation of the Lizzie Borden house. And so...
Yes.
And so you're heading up the investigation on this, and it's not like gonna be like reality paranormal TV where you go in for 72 hours and get 44 minutes of footage, of which 20 minutes is recycled every commercial break, or whatever, like the one good shadow person gets recycled every commercial break. You're going in there and people are going to be with you on the paranormal investigation. You know, I want to get to some of the specific things you're doing for Lizzie Borden in general. But how are you going to deal with just being on camera that much? Is it like keeping people interested, keeping it going? How much preparation, and what are you doing differently in that it's going to be people are joining you for probably a lot of slow parts, you know, probably a lot of, we know how paranormal investigation goes. And how's the preparation different for when you're going in there and knowing you're going to be on camera the whole time?
Well, the first thing I'm preparing for is to get, modest pajamas and sleep in them, because if something goes down in the middle of the night, I have to be ready to like get up and get out of bed and not have to be scrambling for like clothes and stuff. So that was like thing number one, like get pajama pants and like a comfy pajama shirt. And, because I have not been sleeping in pajamas in this hot ass weather. I'll just tell you that much.
Okay.
So I'm just like, okay, get pajamas ready, make sure that you have your shoes ready, like just to be on top of it. Because, well, to be honest, I do plan on sleeping at some portion, but that's a lot of the times, a lot of the activity happens. I think the reason why it's so important to have the 24/7 surveillance is because a lot of the activity would happen like maybe when the environment has less energy in it from the human people and the gear and all of that stuff. So there will probably be opportunities where I'm asleep and then things start to happen in the house. A lot of the times that's the case, when there's less, human energy muddying up the atmosphere,
Sure.
So I think it's really important to have surveillance 24/7 for that reason alone. And what's great about that is that we have, like the Conjuring event, we had people from all over the world in different time zones tuning in. Maybe they're like, oh, I'm going to watch this. It's nighttime in the United States. They're, watching, live cam footage. It would probably be like 2 or 3 in the morning, and they're there just enjoying footage with their cup of coffee on the other side of the world. And then all of a sudden something happens and they report it to us. So I think that's really cool, because we're going to constantly have eyes on this. So there's going to be more opportunities to capture phenomena right as it happens, which is really awesome. And the fact that, if people are bored of seeing me, that's why we have so many amazing guests, you know what I mean? So we've got all different forms of investigators and psychics coming through. We have true crime, historians and investigators in that arena as well. So it's not just going to be this mug. It's going to be a bunch of other people that will definitely keep things fresh.
Sure.
I am looking forward to spending some real time in a location and developing relationship with the energies there.
Well, there's one thing about this particular place is that, obviously if everybody's unfamiliar with Lizzie Borden, the entire Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her parents 40 whacks. And how does the second part go?
When she realized what she's done, she gave her father 41.
Yeah, okay, thanks. That's...
Yeah.
Right, it's a little music for you, a little true crime music. But, it's that famous like jump rope thing of girls singing the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you kind of thing that they sing about Lizzie Borden.
Yep.
And it's this crazy crime from the 19th century where this girl kills her parents. And it becomes famous. She still lives in the town even after the crime. Yeah. She stays there. In Fall River, Massachusetts. And then about how long ago do you know that they started opening the place up for paranormal investigation? Because I know it has been a place for paranormal investigation for the past few years. And is that in the past couple of years, or is that something that people have gone in there and done ghost investigations for decades? Or is this kind of pivoted to be like, well, it's a bed and breakfast, but it's also haunted?
Yeah. Well, I think they knew very well when they turned that into a bed and breakfast that it was going to call true crime and paranormal enthusiasts, like hands down. And so I think for the entire incarnation of it being the Lizzie Borden B&B, it was open to that type, of...
I guess if you're going to put her in the name, right?
Yeah.
Right? You're not...
Yeah.
You're not going to call it the Jack the Ripper house.
Technically...
And not have Jack the Ripper.
Technically, it's not Lizzie's house. It's her parents' house. We're actually going to be going to Lizzie's house the last day of the live event where she moved to after the murders happened. So she was living in this house with her sister, just a stone's throw away from Fall River. And she'd lived in this house during the trial and all of this. So I'm excited to go in there and see what the difference in the conscious energy is, because I do believe that the Lizzie Borden house will have a lot of the stored traumatic conscious energy of the murders there, but not necessarily the intelligent conscious of the spirits there. So it's going to be mostly the residual haunt. I think over in Lizzie's house that she lived in after the murders happened, that's where we're going to start getting the more intelligent responses. That's my hypothesis.
Okay, well, let's go into that for a second. And so that idea that the energy is saved from a place, and instead of an intelligent haunting, like the idea of an intelligent haunting would be a disembodied spirit floating around that thinks and that you can talk to and that will answer your questions and stuff,
right,
versus stone tape style recording that, there's something replaying, and that maybe the walls can replay some kind of recording of energy, kind of like when you put the needle down in the vinyl and then you can hear the Beatles.
Yeah.
If, under the right conditions, then, something might replay. In your investigations, what have you found more of? Because you've obviously investigated a ton of places. Have you found more, you think, intelligent hauntings, or have you found more what you think of as residual recordings?
The two that I'll tell you this right now, I have come across the majority of the stuff that I've investigated have been a lot of things along the side of the Stones tape theory. You pick up a lot of residual energy, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like clockwork because of like the time. It really has to do with environmental circumstances that releases that residual energy, and that tends to be the most common. Now, if I'm coming across something a little bit more intelligent that responds to me, that can literally answer questions in real time, I find that those tend to be a lot of non-human type haunts. So you're dealing with ancient intelligent energies, or beings in other dimensional spaces that are able to fringe upon our dimensional realm. And then, I steer away from using terms like angels and demons because I find that pigeonholes things based on like biblical reference, and that's not what these beings are. But I specialize mostly in communicating with non-human energies. That's kind of like my forte and what I like to do. But I also like to, when I go into a place like the Lizzie Borden house, or a place that has human energy, or crime or things like that have happened. Because a lot of the times I'm going into a location not because something happy happened there. It's usually
right. It's never anything good happens to the haunted house. Like, oh, you know what? You know what awesome thing happened here? 12 people were murdered with an axe. Oh yeah. Right. It's never like celebration ghosts, like slapping five.
So I'm always right. Exactly. I'm always going to locations with these awful historical backgrounds, and I'll go into a place, and the way I stimulate energy is mostly by kind of becoming part of the environment as it was in the memory of that day that those crimes happened, or that trauma happened in that building or place, So I steer away from like a lot of the things you'll see on television, and even on YouTube now. There's this huge boom of YouTube people going out there with like a camera doing 30-minute challenges, and then all of a sudden shit goes down and there's like tons of poltergeist activity.
Right.
And they're always interrogating the property. They're always like questions. And I'm sorry, but like as any other human being, if like I wanted to make friends or resonate with anybody within my space, the last thing I want to do is interrogate them and bring up the memory of the worst time of their life. So I find I catch more evidence when I'm as personable as possible, not necessarily ignoring their trauma, but kind of bringing them out as people. So I love to like play music is a big thing that I do when I'm on investigations. And you never get to see that on TV when I'm investigating, because there's all these like copyrights with music and all of that stuff.
Oh, sure. They're not going to pay. They're not going to pay a licensing fee just so that you can put in a Janis Joplin song or whatever. No, I don't know why I picked Janis Joplin out of it. She's not even there to collect the royalty.
That you said that. That's great that you said that. The last time I investigated. Well, we just. I don't know if you know who Colin Browen is. He's from Paranormal Files Online. He does like his own YouTube show, but he went and investigated the Janis Joplin suite in Hollywood recently, and we featured his footage on the very last Paranormal Caught on Camera, which is the new series that I'm on right now. And he did the same thing. He played Janis Joplin music in the suite that she died, and it spoke to the energies there, and he got some pretty interesting readings and hits on his spirit box.
Ooh.
When I went to go investigate the Manson murders, which I also did with Colin, he and I brought a record player over, and I brought literally first pressed original vinyl of Doors. And apparently, like, Sharon Tate was a huge Doors fan.
Okay.
And so I just played Doors the whole time while we were having dinner. And the idea was like not to interrogate the spirit of Sharon and the other people that were murdered in the homes, like the Folgers and the stylist and all of those people that were killed there, was more like to create like a house party vibe, kind of what was happening the night of the murders, like dinner party, spinning some like classic doors,
Smoking
and
a
we got some
J.
really. We definitely did that. But you know what? It's funny. Like, I had to kind of hold off on smoking. When I'm investigating, I can't smoke weed before an investigation. It literally shuts down. I'll tell you this: if the Lizzie Borden house is really active and I need to go to sleep, you better believe I'm gonna like take an edible or smoke a joint before, because I find that
To shut you
smoking
down?
weed, it shuts down my senses, and it keeps me less psychic, to say plainly. It shuts down my intuitive abilities, which is a good thing sometimes, because it could be quite overwhelming, especially when you're in a location for 4 days. So,
Well,
dealing with
so
things
the
like
Lizzie
insomnia.
the Lizzie Borden house is a place that you guys are going to, you'll be there for a long time. And also, if you have thousands of people across the world who are watching in, that's a lot of intention energy coming at you, the whole time. When you guys did the Sharon Tate investigation, was that at David Oman's house?
Yes, it
At the Sailor Drive?
was.
Okay, yeah. I know. I read his book, and we had him
Yeah.
on last year. And what I've heard about that place though is that the geologic, if I'm not saying it right, the anomaly,
Yeah.
as far as
Yeah.
the compasses and stuff not working, like that stuff is kind of mind-boggling, because you can't figure out, like, why isn't the compass working? Like, what's going on here that might be even more than just kind of spiritual energy? Is there a disturbance in the force?
I noticed the types of like haunts that's going on at David's house is more like, it's a very psychological thing, that in order for it to really come through, it interacts through the investigators, it interacts through the people. It's not so much, you're not going to get like an apparition at David's house. You will get a lot of like thoughts and information in your head. And it was not just happening with me, it was happening with Colin, and it was happening with Peyton, his girlfriend at the time. And it was changing the dynamic in the room, where everybody was just kind of not feeling themselves and taking on characteristics that are not usually theirs. It had kind of like the Shining effect, you know what I mean? A very psychological haunt that was happening. And
Wait, that's interesting. Okay, so you guys are in the place, and you're going into the party atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's this 1960s party atmosphere, and right, and so last year obviously is the 50th anniversary, and I mean, we did a 50th anniversary show where we even covered "Cease to Exist" in that one. We didn't want to promote that one, be like, checks out playing a Charles Manson song, high fives all around, guys. But we just thought it'd be an interesting experiment. But you're in there, you're partying. You're trying to set that vibe that would kind of excite the energies from those people. And then you start feeling different characteristics, almost of a possessive nature.
Yeah, absolutely. We all were becoming possessed. Is especially noticeable with Colin and Peyton. Peyton just had like really hard time being in the location. Colin started having physical issues there, and like the hot flashes, and then all of a sudden it would be freezing, and then it'll be like burning up. And with me, I was having we did have some issues, like electrical issues that were happening in the house too with our devices, but then we would be in areas where lights would be turning on and off on their own. And David has like the cutest pets. He's got 2 dogs and cats. And then they like were normally cuddly and super chill and, hanging out with us. And then all of a sudden their entire demeanor starts to change, and they refuse to walk into certain places. They were walking around with their tails between their legs. It was really unusual to see how like our devices started acting up, and then our like physical, awareness started changing, and the creatures in the house, the cats and the dogs, started reacting, and it just kept escalating and escalating and escalating to the point where we all just started getting really sick in general, like stomach issues. nausea, headaches. Like it was like and we're like, okay, what if this is a house that has incredibly high amounts of EMF, which would cause all of those physical
Sure.
issues. But I'm walking around in every single room on every level of David's house, and I am not picking up any strange EMF readings whatsoever. So that was like really unusual. And that's the thing, people don't realize that paranormal activity or, you know, supernatural anomalous energies don't have to be in the form of mists or shadow people or balls of light. Like this is a weird thing. It's like your body just reacts to these types of energies. And this is because, you know, we like to think that, yes, we are the most evolved we'll be at this moment when it comes to like understanding energy, but there is so much more we can learn,
Sure.
you know? And so right now we're probably encountering and interacting with energies we have yet to discover that down the line, maybe in 100 years from now, it's going to be like, aha, that's what that type of energy was, you know? And, you know, maybe I'll just be on, you know, I'll be a backstory in that history, you know, like
Well, you know,
100 years from now.
what's interesting to me, though, you know, as you were saying that, is because that's a very classic kind of ghost story thing. You know, that idea that the house gets into your head. So a lot of times, I think with modern paranormal investigation, we kind of have this thing where you're like, okay, there's a spirit here, and it's going to talk to us, or it's going to light up the REM pod, or the Ovilus is going to be like, I'm a ghost, you know, kind of thing. But it's very classic ghost story, especially in stories before we had this kind of modern technology. When you think, you know, is that, I mean, that's Turn of the Screw. That, I mean, even Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, like that is very, like, as you said, The Shining, the place gets in your head, so that maybe the haunting is not as much about the intelligence spirit that's still hanging around there or the residual energy, but something about the place that affects people, which, you know, it might be a good thing because, like, let's say Sailor Drive, beyond the Charles Manson stuff, might have been a real fun place to hang out in 1968 and everything. But then Fall River, Massachusetts, where a girl was compelled to murder her parents, might make me uneasy if I was your camera guy coming along on this specific adventure.
Right, because that's a different environment, because you know that it took a very oppressive environment, years and years and years coming, for that snap to happen. And you know, that's, and there's a lot of theories that we're going to talk about on the live event, about the kind of the backstory with the relationships within the family dynamic played a lot into the reason why allegedly Lizzie Borden flipped her shit, you know. So, and then there's a lot, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, a human being could only, you know, take certain amounts of years of certain types of abuses, that before her psychology breaks down to this point where she's just enraged,
Sure,
and has to put an end to it, you know. I'll tell you this, one of the most dangerous woman is an underestimated woman, and that's the reason why she got away with murder. And sometimes it's like, is that a karmic thing? You know what I mean? Maybe she got away with murder. It was a karmic release of something. Maybe even if she did do it, yes, she got away with murder. But the reasons why, which we'll be discussing, she killed her parents, we'll be talking about. And you know, a lot of different historians that have even been translated into movies, you know.
Oh, yeah, that movie that came out with Close to the girl from Boys Don't Cry last year, or a couple years ago. That, I mean, it portrays her in
70. Yeah.
It portrays her in a very, like, like, psycho parent killer light, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of, you know, rumors about Lizzie, and, you know, especially think about what it was like to be a woman before the 20th century. Even a woman in the 20th century, even a woman today. I mean, we've come a long ways, but it's like always underestimated, always being told how to be, how to look, how to dress, how to act, what's proper, what's not. Imagine being born, and Lizzie Borden was a well-known feminist of her day and an activist and all of those things. So there could be a little bit of fire underneath her, if she was feeling a little bit too stifled by, her parents in that arena.
Well, of course, I mean, also the suffragist movement is also very connected with spiritualism and the abolitionist movement as well. Like the spiritualists were on the forefront of both of those things, whether it be in the 1850s or whether it be in the 1910s. The suffrage, the feminists fighting for the right to vote, were a lot of them were part of that spiritualist movement. And so it's, just interesting to see how some of the things come, full circle. From our viewers, Mark Johnson, who I know also watched the Conjuring House event, he says, the Conjuring House event had a lot of cameras and camera angles. I imagine Lizzie Borden house is much smaller, but are you planning on having similar amounts of angles? One thing I enjoyed was watching the follow through of the people and the dog as they moved through various camera angles. So what do you guys have? What's the equipment list for the Borden house?
Something you're gonna have to ask our guy Bill Brock, who has been spending the last couple weeks rigging the whole house up. So every single room is going to have a camera for sure, and we always try to position the camera so that we could get angles into doorways and things like that, so that way we could see the movements of people coming in and out of rooms. So it's going to be set up in exactly the same style as the Conjuring house was, and the reason of that, we had really great outcomes for that in the Conjuring event, because when the Heinzen family was getting interviewed at one point, there was a shadow figure that leaned in behind the family during the interview. And I almost overlooked it because I was like, oh, it's probably somewhat like one of the producers in the back or whatever. But then everything's time-stamped and coded, so there's no way you can like mess with like the angles and in real time and all of that. But other viewers were able to see like, oh, that shadow person only appeared in that doorway, but when that camera was shooting that doorway from the other room, nobody was there. So it validated the experience of us actually seeing a shadow person lean in over the Heinzens. And we had several angles showing that nobody was there, which is really interesting because that means that energy was only perceived by one camera. So the other, why is it, let's say it's not a shadow person. It is a shadow person. So if it's a shadow person, why isn't that shadow person also getting picked up on the other cameras? It's almost like it chose to only be seen and manifested for one particular lens, yet not for the others.
Well, that shows it's a different kind of energy too, because if we think of visual energy, right? If you're thinking of I'm picking up something, I'm picking up a photon or whatever. I don't know the science behind it here. I'm just a dude that likes paranormal stuff. But if I'm picking up a photon on the other side of the room and it's coming to my eye, activating and things like that, versus the shadow figure is being picked up by a camera only, and only one particular camera from a certain angle, that kind of shows that whatever the energy is, it's either, like you said, choosing to manifest itself, or it can only be viewed in one kind of way, in a way that we can't see with our normal eye. And that makes it exciting. Like if the camera picks up somebody walking through the room and you don't see anybody walking through the room, then what is the camera seeing that we cannot?
So it's been scientifically proven already, speaking of photons, that if you were to just simply observe a photon, just the action of being observed changes its characteristics and its behavior. So that's been scientifically proven. So maybe it's because that one camera that was shooting the Heinzen family had the conscious views of the majority of the people viewing at that time was looking at the Heinzen family's interview, that was able to manifest on that camera, because observation can change perception of photons and things like that. But shadow people are kind of the antithesis of a photon. They are the opposite of light. So is it something to be said that, like, I mean, what's the science behind that? If this is or maybe this is maybe it was a type of light that we could only convey as shadow, but other animals can see into like well into the spectrums of infrared and ultraviolet than we can. Maybe our human eye conveys it as a shadow, but maybe it's some form of ultraviolet light that's being observed through the thousands of viewers that were looking at the Heinzen family's interview. And that's probably the reason why it only got captured was through the law of observation.
Sure. Oh, okay. Now I hadn't thought about that. The experimenter effect or whatever but the idea, like the Schrodinger's cat or whatever, like it's only until you observe it that it actually happens. And so if there's more people observing that camera, then that's what it's trying to get at. It's capturing the attention of all of those people. And I think that's where things get interesting because, like you said before, non-human intelligence versus human intelligence. So we'd expect if Lizzie's parents were there or whatever, like they're floating around, they're beheaded ghosts or whatever, or I guess after 40 whacks.
They're crushed skulls.
Right, they're crushed skulls. Just, I hate you, Lizzie. Right, I knew I should have gave you that bike. But like they're floating around, that versus, would they make those decisions, or would some kind of non-human intelligence who is trying to make contact with people, make that decision where it's not necessarily trying to get a message across or it's cursed or something like that. It's from somewhere else and saying, okay, we have all this psychic energy without, a better term for it, staring at us, all this attention, all these people's thoughts. And here is where we can try to get this pinprick through the veil with this shadow person appearing on a camera. So that's a cool idea. I like that. I thought that's a pretty fun idea. Mark agrees. He's like, that was awesome. The view through the kitchen. The same idea of an EVP only being caught on one device when there's multiple present, right? It chooses that kind of thing.
It chooses, yeah.
There's always that kind of moment where, at least I found in talking to a lot of paranormal investigators, where they're interested in this kind of thing. But there's the moment where they go like, I think this stuff is really cool to, it's all real. But the moment where you kind of become not necessarily a believer, but that element of Richard Dawkins that's in your head, that's always like, it's all crap.
Yeah.
Like, when does that, what was your moment where you were like, okay, I know there's something now. There's something different now than can be just explained by a materialist universe perspective. For you, what was that moment for you?
It was the second that I decided to join a team, the second that I decided to share my interests with other people, because then I was able to go with others on investigations and have them corroborate with me things that have happened, that it's not just me seeing this, the fact that somebody else was experiencing these things with me. One was, I was seeing these things in my home, like the light, and I kept talking to my mom about it. It was years later that my stepdad was like stationed in the Army, so her and I used to just share her room. I would sleep with my mom in her bed, and finally we had a mutual experience together where we saw the lights together, and I was like, this is what I've been talking about. She saw them first. She was the one like, Susan, stop playing around. She woke me up. And as I woke up, I just saw, like, out of the corner of my eye, like, just the flash of light just disappear. Because I was just, like, kind of waking up. I was all foggy. My mom was like, I just saw these lights. And I was like, that's what I've been talking about this whole time, Mom. This has been my experience for years. So that was really validating. And then another experience that I had was, it was just like little drops in the bucket, just like little things that I was like, you know what? I don't need to prove to anyone that this stuff happens. Like,
so instead of it being like one event, like with me, it was one event. I saw a shadow person with 4 or 3 other people, and we were like,
yeah, true.
So that was like, I just needed one, right? And I was like, okay, that's it. It's all real. No, but
Yeah.
then, so for you is more, like you said, a drop in the bucket. So more cumulative over time, you're seeing more and more things connect, or more and more things
Yeah.
that you can't explain, where eventually the bucket gets so big, it just comes out, like, just overflows.
Right. Like strange synchronistic events too that are not necessarily your traditional ghost story. Like, I've had when my father passed away, I always have like totems. I was like, for my parents, like my mom is the seahorse and the owl is my dad's. And when he passed away, I had this dream like about a couple months after his death, and uh, I had a dream that an owl came to the like the window, and I was sleeping in my father's room actually, like because we were wrapping up things and getting the house prepared to like move and sell, and so I was there, boxes everywhere. I took a nap, and then I saw my father outside of the window, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, how do I get my father to come in? I was like, oh, I got to get up, but I couldn't get up out of bed. And I was like, why can't I get out of bed? And I was like frantic because I was like, I see my father outside. Like, I'm trying to reach my father and have a word with him and hug him and love him
Mm.
because, like, like this trauma that we've been through. And when I wake up, I see what, like in real life, wake up out of this weird sleep paralysis. I wake up and I look outside of the window and I saw my father's totem. It was a little barn owl that came in right at the location that I'd seen my father. So that's weird shit. That's not
Yes, it
ghost
is.
stuff.
Oh,
That's like weird. That's synchronistic, weird stuff that's like not within my realm of like paranormal, like expertise, science based, used equipment, blah, blah, blah. Like this is something else. And I'm just like, why did I have this dream? It was like a sleep paralysis. And then here's my father's totems, like right there. Like it was just absolutely mind boggling. It's just things like that. I have a lot of synchronicities in my life. And I know I choose to observe my synchronicities. I do little things like call it what you will. I make little wishes, and I set intentions, and
sure.
and then
Well, I
and
mean, that's
literally
not even weird.
things
That's I mean, because
happen.
that's what when you think about what prayer is, and nobody thinks it's
Yeah,
weird when like millions of people go to church every Sunday. You set your intentions of what you'd like to happen. Sometimes you set your intentions just to even be a nice person for the week because it's hard to be nice, at least for me. But you set those intentions into place, and so I just think it's funny because part of religion, because of the rules and stuff like that, a lot of people are pushed away from it, but they still
right.
seek a lot of the things that it has. And so you kind of come around to it where you're like, I still want to set my intentions. I still want to, a prayer kind of thing to put yourself in that mindset. But maybe I don't, maybe I don't want the crazy rules about bacon or something like that, so
Right.
little things like that. We find in this kind of field that you're like, yeah, I don't know why I said I wanted to see a blue sparrow today or something, and then one showed up at my window, right? Or it's like you said, the spirit animal thing, and my wife does not buy
Yeah.
any of this stuff except that's spirit animals, the totems you're talking about. She's like,
Yeah.
I buy that. I don't know. And I that experience where you said like this owl represented my father. I was dreaming about it. I woke up and the owl was there.
Yeah.
That that seems to me to be something that is really. Yes, it might be a coincidence. It might be something that we're putting our own narrative spin on it.
Yeah.
But also, I mean,
I mean, I think it's like the owl was maybe unaware that that was a spirit animal within the vicinity at the time. And my father's consciousness was like, how do I speak to my daughter right now? And it just was like serendipitous that there was an owl there. And maybe I was sleeping, my consciousness was malleable and expanded enough for that connection to come in. And my father like came in like psychically and was like, Susan, look outside. This is how I can tell you. Like, I'm okay, And maybe the owl didn't have anything to do with it.
Sure,
He
right.
just happened to be there. You know what I mean?
But it doesn't
And
matter.
it
Like,
was just like a moment. Yeah.
you
So,
know,
I mean, things like that. I think there was like there was a consciousness that I was like, I don't think it was the owl that was like spiritually like manifested. I think it just happened to be there, and the consciousness of my father just saw the opportunity to show me something, to make me feel better, because it was one of the worst times of my life. So
or to
I was
wake
like,
you up at that
okay,
point. Or, if that's
yeah,
if that's all
like,
he could do was get that
yeah,
message across of just like a little, hey,
right.
get up now. I'm here.
And my father is very spiritual and was the first person to give me a ghost hunting tool. Like, he got me a K2 meter.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, it's because I was having these experiences, and it was like, look, if you ever have like these experiences, use this device. If these lights go off, you could tell that there is an energy there, and it's not just your head. It's not just you having these things. So, and we've definitely talked about, because I believe in ghosts and all of that stuff. I've had spiritual experience my father has studied Reiki healing, was a practicing Wiccan, and very spiritual person as well. So it was like, we talked about it, like, when you die, like, we're going to be in contact, you're going to come and visit me. That's like a thing. And it happened like right after his death, which was very untimely. It was a senior year in high school for me. It was
Oh, that's gotta be
the
traumatic.
worst experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to move from my hometown in Miami, where I went to a really prestigious art school, and I had to like literally say bye to that school to go to a bodunk small ass town and go to that high school and graduate from that high school without my arts. It was like literally tearing me away. Like, I had to be like, okay, I learned how to rebuild after that. That was a really traumatizing experience in my life, and I'm excited to talk about the story too, because I I'm not talking about it right now, because I definitely want to talk about it more in person when I'm like at the Lizzie Borden house,
Sure.
because my father was not, he didn't die of natural circumstances. There was a family issue that was happening, long time coming, like psychosis shit that was happening within the family, and the murder went down. So it was very traumatic for me to learn about that. And my father was the victim. So I actually have a lot in common with the Lizzie Borden dynamic there.
And you're comfortable with using some of that personal trauma in
Yeah.
trying to
And for the
activate some
event,
kind of
the
paranormal.
contact, yeah. Yeah. Well, you have to, I always bring, like my personal experiences in with me on locations, not necessarily baggage, because I try to keep like an open heart chakra, so to speak, when I
Sure.
come into places. I do believe that energies resonate with your energy. So if I come in and I have something that could be relatable to the family, then maybe if I share that energy, if I share the stories, um, that will entice the energies to connect with me, because I'm being so candid and open. I am a pretty open book, like, I have no secrets, and I, share, if wanted, my advice and my experiences with other people when warranted. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to see if my past traumas had any, like, anything that can like stimulate the environment in the Lizzie Borden house, and how is that going to affect me too? Because I actually reached out to one of my friends who knows the story. He's also going to be part of the special event.
Mm-hmm.
His name's Brandon Alvis. He's on Ghost Hunters, and he, when I asked him to be part of the event, he was like, "How do you feel about that, Susan? Like, knowing what you've gone through?" And I was like, I think if anybody is going to host this event, it should be someone like me who's shared very similar experiences in their lives, and so I don't even know how I'm going to react to it, because I know that the Lizzie Borden location is pretty much a shrine to that murder.
Right.
It's got like skull replicas of like what their heads look like after the axes went through, and it's got all of the pictures of the crime scene.
It's a true crime Disneyland.
It is, and it's, you know, there are little things that the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast does. I mean, I have like certain things that I'm like on the cusp of. I'll be honest, like, you know, they sell like little cheddar pieces in the shape of hatchets, and I'm just like, you know, like things like that, you know, and I'm just like, you know, but this is, you know, I understand people like find that awesome. They'll go to a location and, you know, they love it and they love the true crime. And that's because they've never experienced violence and trauma like that in their own families.
Sure.
But here I am going into this event and I'm just like, okay, I could resonate with this. Like, I've been here before. And I'm like, I could skip the cheddar cheese hatchets, you know, like.
Right. The violent, you know, trinkets.
Like, yeah, I'm like, you know, it's crazy. I remember we had a hard time selling the property when my father died, because it was a very well-known situation that had happened. He was the Democratic chairperson of that county, and so the death was very all over the news. My senior year of high school, I had to go to school so fucking early just so that the news wouldn't catch me, because they were trying to get my statement and have me on the news and stuff like that.
Oh, man.
That's actually a reason why I changed my last name, because it was such a prominent murder that had happened in that town. When I started doing the Ghost Hunters franchise, the very first thing they asked me was, hey, we looked up your name and you recently just finished going through this whole trial. And I was like, yeah. They're like, that's kind of bad media. Like, is there another name we can use? So I changed my last name to, ironically, Slaughter.
I was going to say,
and,
it's a pretty metal name.
Yeah. And I love metal too, but I'll tell you this, like, the reason why I was Slaughter is because I went to art school for fashion design. And I had a fetish clothing line called Slaughterhouse Couture prior to all of this crazy shit. And so people used to be like, oh, that Slaughter girl, because of like the clothing that I made. And so I just went with Susan Slaughter. It was the first thing that came to my head. The lawyer didn't even blink at it. And she was like, okay, Susan Slaughter, that sounds good. And hung up.
That's it. Okay.
And I was like, oh. And that's how I became Susan Slaughter, because they did not like my backstory.
Well, I mean, first of all, that's fascinating. And I know that's going to be something really interesting for people who are going to watch the Lizzie Borden investigation. You can get it at thedarkzone.tv is where you guys can sign up. Now, this is going to be the last weekend in August, right?
Yes, it will be we will have a preview day that will open for special viewers. But it's the last weekend in August. And yeah, the first 3 days we're going to be at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. And the last day we're going to go to where Lizzie Borden and her sister actually resided after the murders during the trial.
Awesome.
So we're going to be hitting those two locations.
So that's going to be a lot of fun, a really interesting investigation. Obviously, some things, it's going to be more than just the usual. I mean, you're not just going to be like, come at me, ghost, or whatever. Right. It sounds like it's going to be an experience. So best of luck with that. I'm excited to see some of the footage. I know you guys got a lot of cool stuff for when the Conjuring house happened, and everybody's looking forward. So please make sure to check out the Dark Zone TV. If you guys like anything we're doing here at See on the Other Side, please check out patreon.com/sunspotmusic. You can check that out. And tomorrow night, Tuesday, we will be joined by author T. Krulos, who will be previewing his book, American Madness, and we'll be discussing the Milwaukee Paracon. Thank you so much, Susan. Good luck with the investigation. And everybody else out there, we'll see you on the other side.